have resource, right? But they
Yeah.
can't be nimble.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. So tell me one more thing, like, as a founder, I'm curious, how did you get your initial traction? Like, if you had to give some advice to somebody who's working and to build a product in DeFi, what was the inflection point for you in reaching that traction? Initially, you cannot really gamify a community
How do you start from
when you're,
zero?
yeah, how do you start from zero? And when it's basically, I don't want to hear about the financial incentive aspects, because if there are any in your campaigns, because that is some tried and tested stuff. But did you do something out of the box to really get the community going and get that initial traction?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we did that worked well for us, because I definitely know what you mean. There's that sort of awkward phase when you don't have anyone in your Discord, or like,
Yeah,
and you can't really create content when there's no audience, right?
exactly. Yeah, how do
Um,
you even know what they want, right? Because there's nobody there. So either you're
yeah,
creating content and it's like a trial and error sort of a phase. You're making it, but you don't know what would work.
yeah, and you're kind of in a room talking to yourself. Definitely.
Yeah.
Though we did when we very started, we did a Gitcoin grant, which was actually quite a nice
Okay,
way. And
that
I
helps.
would recommend, it's a good way to kind of track, test interest in your product concept. So we got a bunch of we actually got a bunch of donors from that, and then community members. And then also we had quite a fun little kind of mini viral or viral kind of campaign that was based off a quiz, which we did right at the beginning of, I think it was like March 2021.
Hmm.
And that, I think it really did capture the imagination of people on Twitter. And I think we went from like 500 to over 3,000 members in our Discord from that quiz alone. Which takes, I think, these kind of sort of viral campaigns, creating content, creating these kind of quizzes, like you never quite know what's going to work until you put it out
Right.
there. And
Exactly.
it can take a bunch of time. I think we spent about a week creating this like quiz content, because making it funny and something that people want to engage with is, you've got to be a bit thoughtful about it. But I think, and then it also depends on where you are in the market cycle. So something that works at the beginning of a bull run is not necessarily going to work when you're deep in the bear.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, timing, I think, is important. And like kind of, but I think all of this stuff, it kind of, the more stuff you try, the more likely you are to get a good outcome, because you don't know until you try if it's going to work. And it could
Yeah.
be, maybe a quiz does work, maybe it's a partnership, maybe it's this. So the more stuff you try, the more likelihood of you getting something successful. And I would say also the other thing is like partnerships are very good as well. I guess like, when we're doing this collaboration on this podcast, I think one of the nice things about the Web3 space is overall people are very collaborative, and
Hmm.
sort of a case of kind of growing the pie together,
Yeah.
so I think it's a lot less, there's many more opportunities for collaboration than maybe you might get in kind of traditional tech. And I think that's definitely something to lean into if you're new in the space.
Yeah, I think so too. I think just reaching out and perhaps collaborating, finding common grounds where you can add value to other platforms and other founders, that can be extremely helpful, because again, the space is very small, and usually people, more often than not, everybody is like very helpful and they want to sort of, as you said, grow the pie together. And that becomes like the very foundation on which you can sort of, and becomes a stepping stone for you to perhaps grow your community or just kickstart things. So that's a wonderful answer. Now, okay, let's look a little. I would like to actually ask this as well. Like, how do you perhaps study trends, and how do you decide which features are going to go onto your, on the platform? Do you keep like an open communication with the community on that particular facet as well, or is it more of an internal discussion that you have and decided, okay, this is what you're going to be pushing out next, and this is how you're staying ahead of the curve in this space?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we do, of course, as a team, we're talking about this a lot. We're also, speaking to, our advisors, investors, etc. But we will like question the community members and stuff. Sometimes we'll like put out a quick, like, I'm quite fond of doing a little kind of quick emoji vote on Discord, and then even having conversations with the community members we do a bunch of user testing, which I think is really useful for seeing how people are using your application and what is the stumbling blocks there. Also, like when we've been at in-person events, we can kind of see that. So a couple of things that we prioritized end of last year was fiat on-ramping, and then we also have, and we do have this a little bit of, we haven't announced it yet, but we do have account abstraction coming soon. So you'll be able to like log into HaloFi using your Gmail account, which will be amazing.
Because that is so cool. Yeah.
No, it's going to be great. I'm really excited for it. Because one of the things that we noticed when we were at the booth, and this is at East Safari in Kenya, is that people are coming up and they see the value proposition of saving in dollars and getting yield on it. It's very clear. And they're excited by it, but they don't have a wallet or they don't have any crypto. So these kind of and these are the stuff that it's an issue, but when you're there in person, it just reminds you, so you're like, okay, no, this is actually a really big problem. I need to prioritize this over like whatever cool new feature I want to put that's maybe more interesting to me as a heavy DeFi user. So I think always speaking to the community. I think there's something that people say when you're speaking to users. It's sort of listen for the pain points, but not necessarily the solutions, which I think can be a good way to approach it because, it's also that balance of you have deep context of the product as a builder. And you're going to get a lot of suggestions about what to build, but kind of understanding why somebody wants that and what is the pain point, I think is potentially more useful than, getting a million more feature suggestions. And one thing I have to push back on quite a lot, and we get this all the time, and community members will probably hate me for this, but dark mode. It's like, I know it's nice, and like we will put it there, like when we just have like a bit.
It can't be the highest priority. Yeah,
it's a nice priority, but like, so kind of weighing up these kind of competing demands all the time, right?
Yeah. No, I think more than this, the aesthetics of it. Obviously, the aesthetics matter, and the user experience definitely is paramount. But it's very important as a founder to be able to take that call. How are you going to be prioritizing these features, and what making sure that you're using the resources at your disposal most efficiently. And I think that can be a little bit of a line to toe, but I think good founders that are able to create sustainable brands and that are scaling successfully, they're able to do that very well.
Definitely.
So tell us a little about your team, and are you guys, is it like a remote system that you have, or do you guys have offices? Tell us a little about that.
No, we are remote. So we do have a few people in the same country. I actually don't think we have anyone in the same city. But I'm based out of London. My co-founder Francis, he's based out of New York. We have team members, very distributed. We have Brazil, Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya.
Wow, nice, very distributed. I think that is just how things are after COVID, and also in Web3 in general. And I think it's wonderful because geography does no longer seem like a problem, especially when you are looking to hire good talent.
No, definitely. And being able to have that kind of global pool of talent to hire from
it's
really exciting. Yeah, especially for us, because we are building for a global audience, but also we have, at the moment, we do have a focus on like Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana. So having team members out there who have knowledge of the market and the problem space there, I think is really invaluable. And I think with crypto at the moment, especially when we talk about sort of consumer use cases and real use cases, I think almost like we're going to see a lot of that innovation come from outside of like Europe and America, because people are, there are real problems with, payment infrastructure, getting access to finance, etc., and people are really finding creative solutions to that. And there's a lot of innovation going on, just outside of places that maybe typically have more funding and more established tech communities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this would have been my next question. I would have because you're building for the world and you're building in the DeFi space. Compliance can at times, and just making sure that you're on the right side of the law, because with different jurisdictions comes like different kinds of compliance that you might have to adhere to or follow, if at all the case. Is that is that in any way a challenge for you guys? And is that how you are perhaps deciding on which countries to roll out your services in first? Or focus on which countries?
Yeah, so it's not actually for us, it's not really been, I mean, obviously we look at like the legal situation and stay on the right side of the law. But for us, it's more of like where can we add value to our users and where can we see a really solid use case for our product.
Hmm.
Because we don't want to, we don't want to build for just degens or, people who've, there's a lot of products out there and there's nothing wrong with them because I think a lot of these products have brought a huge amount of innovation to the space also. But the main user group are people who maybe got into crypto early and have a very high net worth, etc. And for these users, like throwing around like 10K is like not a big deal, right? Or they can spend all day like yield farming, etc. And trading NFTs, etc. Whatever is the kind of zeitgeisty thing to do. But we wanted to, because we want to really kind of help onboard people to crypto who aren't in the space, and then also use crypto to solve real problems and really help people kind of build their wealth with crypto. For us, it's like finding the right way to use crypto that is actually going to be
Hmm.
adding value, and
Right.
not just a game, is kind of really important to us. And I think this is kind of why we have a focus on this region of the world at the moment, because we really do see that it is actually, you can use crypto to build a more transparent, a more integrated financial system, and actually help people get exposure to financial tools that they wouldn't otherwise be able to access.
Right. I think that is absolutely key there. So now, talking a little about the future, what are the kind of bigger milestones that you're looking forward for with HaloFi? Like, are you guys, you did mention account abstraction as something that is coming up, and I'm so glad that you shared it with our listeners, and everybody must be really excited about it. But is there any other bigger milestone that you're looking at, which really excites you?
Yeah, so this is a good question. Of course, beginning of the year, we've been doing a bunch of roadmap planning and everything. There are some things that I really can't mention that are in the roadmap, but account abstraction is very much coming soon. .tm, but we're close to finalizing that. We
Right.
will also be, one of our priorities is to get a wider range of like yield sources, so that users have more variety in what yield and return that they can get on their crypto. Also looking at ways that we can maybe bring a little bit of gamification into HaloFi Save and kind of make it rewarding to users in that way. We are constantly doing user testing, so we've got improvements to our UI coming almost weekly, definitely monthly.
Hmm.
So that's an ongoing thing. But yeah, we do have some quite exciting things in the pipeline, but I can't mention them just yet, unfortunately.
All right, okay. So we will be waiting for your next update with bated breath because what you're building is very exciting. And as I said, this is something that I feel most excited about because I think it's so important that use cases be created around real problems that people have and with real users who are perhaps able to utilize that platform for their own age, for their, to solve their own problem without any financial incentive, external financial incentive, perhaps. So, more power to you, really, Rachel. This is wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you. No, it's that's great to hear. It's very, very kind of you.
So, I would love to know a little more from you. And now we're zooming out a little bit about just the market in general. What is your take on where the markets stand right now? And
Mm.
what do you think is going to be one of the driving factors, or a few driving factors? I think everybody says that the Bitcoin halving is going to be a driving factor for the next bull run. But apart from that, what do you think it would take for the market to pull out of where it is right now? It's doing relatively better, but nevertheless.
Yeah, so of course, this is the $1 billion question, right? And I think, yeah, the Bitcoin halving is a big one. Of course, we've also, seen the Bitcoin ETF.
Hmm.
Whether more ETFs come onto the marketplace, I think that will be definitely a big thing for driving growth in, well, I guess in Europe and America. I'm really interested in seeing the evolution of like the real world asset space. So bonds and shares, etc., coming on chain. I think something that we're looking at is how can we get our users more exposure to yield from real world assets, because I think that is very compelling to users who kind of want to see what the yield is backed up from. So that's super exciting. What will be driving it, like I couldn't quite say, but I think obviously we do have big institutions coming on, and we are seeing things getting increasingly tokenized. So I think maybe we're actually going to go a little bit. I mean, I know the end of the last bull run became very NFT driven. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that will be quite the narrative of the next one, and maybe it is going to be more around the kind of financialization of bringing real world assets on chain, and then also bringing on chain assets into the real world via ETFs, etc.
Yeah, I think that is one, real world asset tokenization has just gained like a little traction now. I think more people are talking about it. Obviously, it's been around for a while, but more and more people are taking interest in it. And especially with the ETF coming in, perhaps, how these two can intersect, it would be interesting to see. And I think it would have bigger ramifications as well.
Definitely. But it's always a difficult question, right? The market cycle does always surprise you a little bit as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
see
You should
NFTs
never try to time
coming.
it.
I
Yeah,
did not see
exactly. Neither
NFTs
did.
coming as big as they did. So
Yeah,
I'm
same
often
here.
wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, same here. I've actually stopped. Like I think as when I started off, I used to try to time the market, but that was stupid of me. But now I don't do that, and completely agree on the NFTs. But I did not see that as well. Like I used to really think not very fondly of NFTs when they had initially come around with the CryptoKitties and just the digital art aspect of it. But as we move forward, and obviously even that became very big, and I couldn't understand for a long time as to why it gaining the kind of traction it was. But now with NFTs, we're seeing so many use cases. It's absolutely wonderful to see that kind of evolution that has happened.
No, definitely. And I think, I guess with NFTs, and I'm less in the NFT space, but like seeing this kind of merger of like internet culture and NFTs is really creative to see like what comes out of that, and that's quite fascinating. I also think it's going to be an interesting time for like DAOs and more kind of established, that process becoming more mature. And I think we've seen this with like the evolution of like delegates, etc. And I think that will be an interesting one to see as well. So yeah, like it's going to be definitely will be an interesting time, and I feel, I don't know, touch wood, hopefully things slowly getting better.
Yeah, absolutely. You and me both, we are both hoping for that. So here's to perhaps that. And, with that, I would like to perhaps come to the last few questions because we're running out of time. We're already over time, actually. But I would just love to know, as somebody who's been in the space for a while, and, you've also done the teaching bit, what are the kind of resources that you would recommend to builders and who are just starting off perhaps in Web3?
This is a good question. And I think it's always changing a lot. I definitely
Yeah,
would say
very dynamic.
very dynamic. Anyone who's getting into Web3, especially if you're coming from a Web2 background, and even my knowledge on this is going to be a little bit out of date because I haven't been learning Solidity for quite a while now. But like I definitely found, like, for example, when you step into the space, things like documentation are not going to be as comprehensive and as battle tested as you would get with
Yeah, Web
Web2
two.
products.
Yeah.
But I think what I would say to counterbalance that is the upside that you have is that there is an amazing community and amazing developer communities. So there's a number of different discords that I was in. I'm using them less now, but certainly when we're building the early prototypes of HaloFi and Good Ghosting, that I could jump in there and be like, oh, like, I don't know why it's doing this. And somebody would actually answer my question and give me help and support on that. And I think definitely if you are working with, I don't know, if you're building on whatever blockchain, Celo, or if you're building with whichever protocol or SDK, they all have discords and channels, and be prepared to go into those and ask. And if something's not working in the tutorial or the documentation, ask about it, because it's probably like stuff moves fast and it's probably out of date. So that would be my number one like approach to learning in this space is be hungry and ask a lot. I'm just trying to think. Yeah, I think for me, there was a number of channels that I use, but actually, my mind is a little bit foggy this morning. I need another cup of coffee, but things like going to a hackathon, I think, is a great way to get
Yeah.
indoctrinated into the space and then meet a lot of people. And even that's how the actual original idea of HaloFi came from an ETH Global Hackathon back in 2020. So many exciting things can come out of hackathons, even company formation.
Absolutely. I think that is very, very true. Hackathons can be great places to really start off, kick off, or just build your idea initially. And even, if you're foggy, happens to the best of us, by the way. That is absolutely okay. I think you did give some really good recommendations. Rachel, again, I'm very, very grateful that you could do this call and record this podcast with me. Before we wrap this up, I would like to merge the last two questions. This is something you've kind of already covered in this conversation, and this is something I ask everybody who comes on the show, and especially people who've come from Web2. What would be your two suggestions for people to start living on blockchain? And any parting words before we wrap this up?
Yeah, so I would just say try things out. I think
Yeah.
it's always good to get a little bit of a test wallet, pull a small amount of Ethereum or whichever. I mean, maybe experimenting on Ethereum is pretty expensive these days with gas, so pick a low gas blockchain.
Yeah.
Try out apps, dApps, and if you're going to, a lot of the time you can even find like boilerplate for what you need to deploy. So Open Zeppelin have a bunch of ERC20 contracts, basically any kind of standard contract they have there, which you can deploy it to a test net as well, and then you can mess around with the parameters and learn, and there's no risk of losing any real value. So that would be my first one. And yeah, just chat to people, go to events, follow on Twitter. I know Twitter can be a bit chaotic, but I think it's still probably the best place to keep up to date with industry trends and news. Yeah, so really that's my advice.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And before we wrap this up, Rachel, any parting thoughts?
No, just that I'm very excited that we're actually kind of entering a new era for crypto and a new stage where we're focusing on building value for users. It's also exciting that I think we had a stage where there was a lot of focus on infrastructure, and that has been good because we've seen more infrastructure come out. But of course, as building a consumer product, I'm glad to see that now building for consumers starting to have a little bit of airtime again, and actually trying to find those products that do have product market fit and give their users real value.
Yeah, I think building in crypto or Web3 has basically different eras. I think you initially everybody was working on different chains, and then people were working very heavily on infrastructure, and then there was the NFT boom, and a slight derailment was perhaps how everybody wanted to use machine language and a little bit of AI here and there, and now I think we seem to be a little right on track with the utility products and consumer facing products, which will actually really help in building the ecosystem further.
Definitely. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much once again, Rachel, for taking out the time to speak to me. I'm very, very grateful. This has been a wonderful conversation.
And thank you so much for having me. It's likewise been a great conversation on my end. So excited about it.